Hey everybody, it's me, Ardalis, and in this quick video I'm going to show you the difference between these two icons, play and play with hollow, which correspond to these menu items, start debugging and start without debugging. One of them is usually a lot faster, so we're going to add some timers here and we'll see how it goes. So first let's hit the big bright green button that's always been there that most people use by default. And this is using the eShop on Web sample application that's available on GitHub, so you can run this yourself if you want. And let's try it out. And done. Okay, so there's the thing. All right, so we're going to tear that down. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and I previously built it before I ran that, by the way. And we can do another iteration just to see if it's any faster. Sometimes it will be. Yeah, so definitely much faster the second time. So that wasn't too bad, actually. And then let's try it with this button. And it's up. And let's just try that one again. I got to make sure I actually close the application because it was running in a separate console. So let's run it again. And it's up. So it's very, very fast when you run with that one. Sometimes it's faster than others when you run with the debugger. So it also depends on which type of app you're running. If you're running an older .NET Framework application, those tend to have a much longer startup time and a more noticeable difference between running it with or without the debugger. Let me see if I can find an example for that. All right, so here's a different solution. This is my devbetter.com website for my developer career coaching program. And so I just did a .NET clean. So let's start with Control F5 this time, which is start without debugging. All right, then it's up. And let's clean again. And we'll try it again with debug. And that one's up. Now it does seem like once you've run it once and you've got, obviously all of the NuGet packages in place and cached, right, subsequent runs are faster. Done. And for comparison, done. All right, I'm going to add timings to those in the post process so you'll be able to see the actual times. But generally, you should see faster behavior if you don't attach the debugger. So using this little button here, if you prefer the icons, is going to generally give you faster performance. And using the debug button, which you're probably used to hitting, is going to typically be slower. At the very best case scenario, it's going to be about the same, but it might be significantly slower to start the debug process. I'm hoping that Visual Studio will consider changing these. I understand that Rider and other IDEs changed this already so that they are more clear, right? When you have start debugging, that's a really long way to say debug, right? I want to debug the application, right? And start without debugging, that's starting, right? That's run, right? What do we call that in the .NET CLI? It's .NET run. So that should just say run. And in fact, if you look at Rider, that's what it has. It has a run button and it has a debug button. And it's super clear. And the run button is the one that I at least would use most of the time because I don't often use the debugger when I just want to see the application work, right? If I don't have a breakpoint set, I probably don't want to run the debugger. I'd be interested to see what Microsoft's data is for how many times people finish a debug session in which they never hit a breakpoint, right? Or for which they never even had any breakpoint set. I suspect there'd be an awful lot of those as a percentage if they look at their key metrics that they collect from Visual Studio. And that would tend to support the fact that a whole lot of people are really just trying to run their app, but they're hitting the debug button instead of the run button because of this, right? Because they've been conditioned to use F5 for the longest time. Microsoft didn't even show the button for start without debugging anywhere on the toolbar here. They've recently added it here, but it's still harder to do Control F5 than just F5, right? So like I ran a Twitter poll. Let me pull that up real quick. It's still ongoing as we write this. So I ran this Twitter poll that has 4 days left, about 650 votes so far, and asked folks, what do they hit? Do they hit F5 or Control F5? And obviously the vast majority are using F5. A bunch of them wrote in to say that they're hitting the play button. There's a few members of the Visual Studio team are participating here, which I think is great. And here is someone showing, for example, that Control F5 is generally much faster, especially because of latency to the symbol server, which the debugger needs, but start without debugger does not need. I had someone ask, they just use the play icon, and I asked them, do you use the slow one or the fast one? I haven't gotten a reply on that yet. And someone else wrote in and said, I hit this button, and I asked, what's the difference? Which one, right? So he's hitting the play button, same as F5. I use the solid one. F5 seems more efficient, versus clicking the link, right? He's saying the hotkey is more efficient. I said, try the hollow button for comparison. Incomparably faster. Wow. Right? So depending on your application, and I know this applies more in my personal experience with .NET Framework apps than with .NET 8 apps, but you may see a significant difference between these. So let me know in the comments what you think. Would you appreciate making it more obvious that maybe we should have run instead of start without debugging in there? In addition, I ran another Twitter poll recently asking about this change and suggesting that we have a debug menu option and a start, or even better yet, a run menu option. And a whole lot of people thought it was a decent idea, right? 65% versus 19%, right? So these don't really correspond to the actual percentages because you got to throw out this 17 over here. So, it was a 64.5 out of 83% thought this was a good idea, which is not bad. I actually created a Visual Studio feedback item for this, suggesting that they change those tags from start debugging, start without debugging, to simply start for without debugging, and debug for when you want to debug. Or even better yet, down here you can see, just call it run and debug. And that would correspond more closely to the CLI, be shorter, be more clear, and you wouldn't have to have this big convoluted way to say start without debugging, because it's not like anybody using the CLI says .NET run dash without dash debugging. It's verbose for no good reason. All right, so let me know what you think in the comments, and catch you next time. Keep improving.